Awarita.
Beth Abramovitz, Assistant Town Manager, Town Engineer.
Thank you. Town of Oro Valley.
Jose Rodriguez, Town of Oro Valley.
Thank you, Jose. ADOT Tucson District. Okay. Tohono O'odham Nation.
Good morning, Patricia Pablo, Tohono O'odham Nation.
Thank you. Pasquayaki Tribe. I think I saw Jason coming in. Jason Bahi.
Sorry, Jason Bahi.
Thank you. City of South Tucson. City of Tucson.
Robin Rain, Deputy Director, the Transportation Firm.
Thank you. Pima County.
Ana Olivares, Pima County.
ADOT Transportation Planning Division.
Mark Hoffman, ADOT Multimodal Planning Division.
Tucson Airport Authority. Suntran.
Steve Spade, Suntran.
University of Arizona.
Mark Novak, University of Arizona.
Pima County DEQ was not able to attend. And Tohono O'odham Nation San Javier District, also not in, I don't believe. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
Welcome.
Okay, we'll keep moving. Item number 2, Paul, can you please review the in-kind reporting?
Happy to, Madam Chair. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of the meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG, RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects also may be eligible for consideration for matching funds. That's all I've got, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the March 16, 2022 meeting summary. Did everybody get a chance to review, and are there any comments or requested changes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the meeting summary for March 16, 2022. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda, we have the legislative update on proposed transportation-related legislation. Mr. David Zinda.
Good morning. I'm David Zinda. Thank you, Madam Chair. Policy analyst here at Pima Association of Governments. I will admit that I am presenting in a kind of a different spot than where I normally am in my office. There's a lot of background noise. If anytime video, audio, or there's distracting noise pops up, just feel free to jump in and let me know. But to the main feature, some of the legislative updates at the state level we'll start with. It is now, as of today, the 101st day of the second regular session of the 55th Arizona State Legislature. In theory, this should be it. This should be the last week. Adjournment should be wrapping up here soon. Shouldn't extend beyond April 23rd. However, we always are aware that this is not always the case. As of yesterday afternoon, some 1,780 bills have been introduced. 188, looks like maybe about a tenth or so, have passed, and 157 of those have been signed into law, and not one has been vetoed. Should they choose to do so, House and Senate leadership can extend the session no more than 7 days. Thereafter, any extension would require a majority vote in each House. Extension, it would seem, is likely necessary at this point, given that we don't have a budget bill. Speaking of that, focus and effort really should now be on the state budget via the General Appropriations Act and other capital outlay and budget reconciliation bills. Last year, if you recall, budget legislation really did not get moving until May and was not signed into law until late June. Budget bills have been introduced into the House earlier this week, which are effectively continuing resolutions. They are so-called skinny budgets and would continue funding the state government at the same level as the prior fiscal year, with some adjustments for inflation. However, we do have a large surplus in the tune of $5 billion if we were to go this route. And this is a large amount considering that the annual state budget hovers in and around 12 billion. So I unfortunately don't have any answers as to how this will unfold yet. So we'll just have to wait and see how the budget process continues along. And we'll provide you updates along the way, of course, through these meetings. Several transportation funding bills will likely see success or failure via these appropriations bills from the larger budget process. And many have already gone through both chambers of legislation with support. It is a good sign for these transportation bills to be passing through these chambers, good indicator that they might be eventually included in the budget when the appropriations bills are well underway and going through. With that in mind, here are a few noteworthy bills we're following considering transportation funding and the like. If you recall, I talked earlier about House Bill 2396. This really doesn't affect our region. It's really a bill influenced by the Rural Transportation Advisory Council and provides 50 million to various projects throughout mostly rural areas of Arizona, the closest being, I believe, Ruby Road down near Nogales to us. Although it doesn't affect the PAG region, it's still important to keep an eye on. Some legislative majority leadership have indicated only a desire to fund state highway projects and not smaller jurisdictional rural ones. So if this bill ultimately ends up in the budget, it would be a sign that maybe they're not so hard stance on that line. Having that said, this bill last had some action in January through the House Transportation Committee, but really hasn't seen anything else. We'll see if it's resurrected in the budget. House Bill 2598 and its counterpart, Senate Bill 1356, is Maricopa County's transportation tax. It's their version of the RTA, which has some different requirements, including the need to be passed through the legislature every time it's up for renewal. The House version of the bill appears to be stuck in the House after passing out of committee, last I checked. The Senate version did pass out of the Senate, but went to the House where they're still having problems. And it sounds like this bill is being not prioritized until the budget really gets underway, and then they might pick that up again and turn attention to it. So we'll keep an eye on that. House Bill 2728 is one that, of course, we're watching very closely here in our region. This is an appropriations bill to ADOT to fund Tier 2 studies for a variety of projects, including providing up to 14 million in funding for a Tier 2 study for the Sonoran Corridor here in Pima County. If you recall, it passed the House 56-3 in late February, seems pretty enthusiastic to me, and passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee recently. This could be the final stop for this bill until the greater budget process begins, where it may potentially be included there. Senate Bill 1148 relates to the vehicle license tax sales and pegs it to sales price instead of the manufacturer suggested retail price, which would effectively reduce VLT revenues to the state. It's forecasted about 70 million annually, since it rewards you for being able to bargain for a cheaper price in your car and thereby pay a smaller tax. It did pass out of the Senate, I believe, recently 16-13, largely along party lines, headed for the House where it has had no scheduled hearing. Senate Bill 1239 is an appropriations bill which would widen I-10 between Chandler and Casa Grande at the tune of $400 million. This bill did pass the Senate 27-1, so that seems like an endorsement to me, and assigned to and passed out of the House Transportation Committee and also the House Appropriations Committee on the 17th of March. Unlike other appropriations bills, which you've heard me say again and again, tend to go through the budget process, there is some talk of this one fast tracking it and passing it outside of the normal budget process. That would mean putting it on the House floor at this point, passing it through the House, and then sending it to the governor to get him to sign it, which is a priority he indicated also in his budget request. This is largely to get funding secured early on and be competitive potentially for a mega grant. It sounds like that some legislators are interested in pursuing. House Bill 2701 regards transaction privilege tax for prime contracting. And this would reduce the tax base for prime contracting classification of the transaction privilege tax to 60%, down from 65% of gross proceeds of sales or gross income derived from business contracts entered into July 1st, 2023 through July 30th, 2024. And then taking it an additional 5% down to 55%, again from 65%. Of gross proceeds of sales or gross income derived from business contracts entered into July 1st, 2024 and after. This may affect RTA revenues slightly by a few hundred thousands of dollars per year. And this did pass out of the House 31-28 on the 23rd of February and was referred to the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committees, but I do not believe it has had any scheduled hearings since then. Senate Bill 1004 also relates to TPT and remote sellers. The point that would affect us the most is it would apply TPT to taxable sales instead of gross sales, where currently now is applied. Since taxable sales on average tend to be less than gross sales, this may have a fiscal impact on the general fund that would likely lower TPT revenue in my mind, but there's not enough data for some of the analysts up at the Capitol to really put out a firm number that we would have an idea of. This bill did pass out of the Senate Committee of the Whole, but there was no further action, certainly not in the House yet, if at all. Lastly, there was a bill passed. This kind of is a little bit away from funding, but good to make note of nonetheless. And this was signed by the governor. The Senate Bill 1273, which regards two-wheeled motorcycle operation. And basically, it says that the operator of a two-wheeled motorcycle is permitted to overtake and pass another vehicle that is stopped in the same direction of travel in the same lane to operate the motorcycle between lanes of traffic on a street that is divided into at least two adjacent traffic lanes going in the same direction, with a speed limit that does not exceed 45 miles per hour. So if you see motorcycles zooming in and out of stopped traffic, looks like this will be legal now. And I encourage you to take a look at that if that is of interest to you. That concludes at least everything that's going on in the state, and I really have no federal legislation updates at this time. So unless there are any questions, I think we are concluded.
Thank you, David. Does a committee have any questions for David? Okay, I don't see any hands on the screen, so thank you very much, David, for that update. Next on the agenda, we have a status update on the Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan. Mr. Paul Cosartano, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'll be covering this with support from other staff. Our project manager, Jeanette Duran, could not be with us today, but she's really got the helm of this project, and it's a team effort all the way through. So we'll give you an overview of where we are with 2055 Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan Update, also known as the RMAP, and give you a sense of where we're headed next and what steps we need you to take in order to make sure that we have good, accurate, and timely information related to the projects that are being considered for the long range plan. All right. Okay, I do have the control. All right, so it's just some of the basics. We've been in front of this committee many times to discuss the federally mandated long range plan. So this may be familiar to many of you, but we'll just give you an overview just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. So we are dealing with a long range transportation plan that's federally required. The last update was approved in September of 2020. We're currently working on developing the foundation for the 2055 RMAP. And so we're going to be looking at a 30-year horizon there. Okay. So the RMAP update that was approved in 2020 focused on technical elements with updating demographic data, the project list, revenue projections, and developing the regional performance report. The 2055 will be a more extensive plan that will include data updates, but more thoroughly, it'll be addressing revisions to the project list, which Josh Pope will be speaking to in a few minutes, reevaluation of the finance plan and assumptions that are built into the revenue forecast, which we'll have David Zinda speaking about momentarily, and then more extensive public outreach, which we will discuss at future meetings. Okay, so the 2055 RMAP has been in development since the document was approved. More specifically, we've been working feverishly on preparation for updates that will guide and inform the plan as we move forward. So we've been updating data for the new activity-based model and land use model that will be running in association with the 2055 RMAP. We've been tracking performance measures and reporting on progress toward our PM targets. We've been building the RMAP Project Explorer and enhancing the functionality there, which Josh will be demonstrating today. And we've been tracking federal requirements for long-range planning and tracking and preparing for new federal funding. So looking forward, this slide shows the pieces of the plan that we're currently working on and you can expect to see in the near term. We're working toward getting the existing conditions and base information together that will essentially be the foundation of the plan. So we anticipate many touch points back with TPC. We may need some coordination with you to get to the right staff within your agencies. We'll be working through our other committees as well when it comes to population data and other data that we need review and oversight and expertise and input on. So that's what I have for you today. Now I'm going to turn it over to David and I'll walk him through slides here. And he's going to give you a sense of how we're approaching the finance plan for reasonably anticipated revenues for the 2055 plan.
Hello again. Yes, I'll be leading the effort to develop a lot of these funding estimates going forward. So I look forward to working with you all. So today I just wanted to share a brief overview. Federal regulations, of course, mandate that the 2055 RMAP, as the federally required long-range transportation plan in the PAG region, create a financial plan to ensure fiscal constraint in the project list. Furthermore, federal regulations require that these estimates of funding sources be reasonably expected. So when 2055 comes, don't come to me with the actuals, what I budgeted for you, and I'll be retired by then anyway, by the way, so you won't be able to find me. Reasonably expected, though, nonetheless, is kind of what we're going for here. For the purpose of the 2055 RMAP, we are considering estimates of all our major sources of local, state, and federal funding. Although we don't really have any forecast to share with you at this time, you can see some of the funding we will be considering in the bullets below, and this is not an exhaustive list. As we produce reasonably expected estimates, we will review them through the committee process in time, and we'll share with you more details as we know them and as we create them. It is important to note that we anticipate using funding estimates produced by experts whenever possible. For example, her forecast will likely be based on ADOT's official forecast generated by professional economists and then extrapolated to 2055. Likewise, RTA estimates will likely be based on the official forecast, again, created by economists of the Eller Business Research Center. We'll be relying on your help, and I'll be reaching out specifically to develop reliable estimates of available local funding, which is a large portion of RMAP funding revenues. In particular, I'm going to be requesting your help in estimating funding amounts your jurisdiction plans on using for transportation-related projects that are regional in nature. Ideally, it would be helpful to have a reasonable year-by-year estimate of local funding, whether that be HERF, sales tax, impact fees, and so on and so forth, slated for regional projects, not local priorities such as pavement preservation and the like. Through 2055. And if you can't do 2055, we can always extrapolate that and work with you on that. We'll be following up with an email soon with this request as well. The bottom line of total funding available for the 2055 RMAP will depend upon the possible extension of the RTA. Currently, the financial plan's assumptions are built surrounding a continuation of the 1/2 cent sales tax. However, it is the duty of the RTA board to set the exact tax rates, whether that be 1/2 cent or anything else, and it will be the voters who decide if the sales tax continues. If you recall, in the last RMAP cycle, a continuation of the 1/2 cent sales tax was assumed. With that, that kind of concludes what I was hoping to share today. Unless there are any questions, I'll turn it back over to Paul.
Madam Vice Chair, we can take questions at this point. The next half of the presentation is going to be a little bit more instructional on what we'll need from jurisdictional members in terms of cleaning up project list and reviewing the RMAP Web content. So we can certainly take questions at the end, but if there's any questions now, we're happy to address those.
Thank you, Paul and David. Does the committee have any questions at this point?
All right, with
Okay.
that, maybe we'll hand it over to Josh and he'll walk you through what we're gonna look for from you. And I'll take it away, Josh.
All right, let's see if I can control it. There we are. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm here to give you an update on the 2055 RMAP Web and kind of step you through what we've prepared with that and what we're going to be asking you to do in the upcoming months. So my portion of this presentation is broken into 2 parts. The first part is just going to be high-level site overview, and then the second part is going to be the project review task, what we'll be asking you all to step through. With the site overview, we're really going to be focusing on the kind of the 5 components of the website. This should look familiar to everyone that has participated in the past, but just a reminder, you can access the different pages of the platform through the navigate menu in the top bar. And so we'll look at the project review page, the project explorer page, project review, reports, the about page, and the PM dashboard. So in the project explorer page, we've provided this for your reference. At this stage of the process, we've disabled the create new projects. That's going to come at a later stage. Right now, we're just looking at an update of the existing project list. But we wanted to incorporate just to have this available as a point of reference. We'll have, as we prepare for that create new project phase, we'll have more relevant data incorporated as we gear up for that. So at this point, this is just kind of a bit of a placeholder, but it is available for your reference. The next page is the project review page, and this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time in this initial ask. It's similar in nature to what we've provided in the past with the project list and the related map. One point of note is we have the RMAP projects in the top grid here, and we've also incorporated the submitted RTA next projects. Just as a point of reference for your information, this just brings over the information that you've shared with us about your submitted RTA next project. So, but the majority of your energy is going to be focusing on the updating the RMAP list. We just shared those submitted RTA next projects for your reference and for your information of the information you've already shared with us. The next page is the, and we'll be spending more time on the project review page in the next portion. The reports page is similar to the way we had in the past, where you can filter and access different information and export an Excel table. So you can have that, your data outside of the system. So, and the about page steps through some of the base materials that we've prepared for this. And the performance measure dashboard gives you a link to the dashboard that's been maintained, showing how we're tracking tracking to target and the goals of the most recently adopted RMAP, the 2045. So that's there for your reference and consumption as well. The project review tasks that we're now requesting of you to kind of step into are kind of three primary tasks: the maintenance tasks of updating your project list. So if you could please identify completed projects, identify projects to delete, and update cost estimates. And I'll step through how to kind of engage on that. Identifying completed projects, as I mentioned, this top grid of the RMAP projects has a filter capabilities across the top, and also a free text search. So you can just punch in values there and filter the table. So as you're looking for completed projects, you can begin to type in the name, and it'll pull up relevant projects. And then you can click on the project data page is accessible through the hyperlink in the cost estimate column, similar to how we've done it in the past. And as the other key piece of this exercise is to update the costs. Right now, they're all showing up as needed with that kind of hyperlink. So when you click on that needed hyperlink, you'll then get that project data page. And for a completed project, you'll need to edit the project. So click on that button to start an edit session, essentially, and then check the completed box and then save your edits. And that's all will be involved in identifying that you have that this RMAP project has been completed. The next task, identifying projects to delete, similar kind of workflow. Use the tools across the top to filter or search for a relevant project that you feel is no longer required to be on the RMAP list, kind of cleaning out some of older constructs of projects, and then clicking in to the cost estimate needed hyperlink that will give you access to the project data page. And then you will just need to click on the remove project button, either at the top or the bottom of the page, and confirm your decision. And then that project will be flagged as deleted in the system, and that'll help kind of clean up the project list. The next task is kind of probably more extensive of a task, as we're going to ask you to look at all the remaining projects and update the cost estimates. And again, similar to the way we've done it most recently in RTA Next and previously in the RMAP update, we have a cost estimate tools prepared. So when you click on that needed hyperlink, that takes you into the project data page. The top part shows you kind of the base information, but as you scroll down the page, you'll get to the estimated cost portion of the exercise. You're going to want to click on Edit Project and then key in information with the new sponsor estimate. Something that's new with this release is we're sharing with you the adopted cost estimate from the 2020 exercise. And while the content was adopted in 2020, we went through this cost estimate exercise earlier in the at different stages throughout the process. So those numbers may be a little in need of review, but we have them there as a point of reference of what's on the books as the adopted cost estimates in the 2020 adopted RMAP. We have also revisited the cost estimate based estimates exercise and provided a 2022 formula. So this is now this is kind of another iteration of the effort. We have updated cost estimates, and those details can be viewed by clicking on the hyperlink of adjustment factors, and that'll give you access to the documentation behind it. So again, we're building off the work that we shared with you previously that you had accessible in the RTA Next exercise and the RMAP update last time. But we've gone and revisited the numbers and working with our colleague, Rick Ellis, who has worked closely with many members of the committee and looking at current costs, and stepped through an update of some of those base assumptions. And those are reflected in that 2022 formula. So when you come into the site to update it, you'll need to start an edit project to update those costs, and then either save it if you're comfortable with what is displayed here, or just key in any updated numbers that you feel more comfortable with. And so those are the kind of the basic components of what we're asking you to do. Step through the identifying completed projects, identify projects to delete, and update those cost estimates. And we're asking you to take the time beginning this afternoon. I think we're going to switch over to the new platform through the end of July. And the intent behind that is to just kind of take care of this maintenance of the existing projects prior to kind of a anticipated heavy workflow with the upcoming tips. So kind of take care of this stage of the exercise of the RMAP prior to next fall's tip programming exercise. That'll be some workflow on your plate. And of course, if you have, we'll be available to meet one-on-one with any kind of detailed questions and project specific for jurisdictional partners. Be happy to meet with you. And if anybody has any questions, you can ask Jeanette or Paul or myself, and David Zinda would be also available for any financial questions. But that wraps up my presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions about the platform. Robin.
Just a quick question. At
Yes.
a quick glance, looking at the estimating tool, it doesn't appear to account for corridor expansions for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit facilities on a corridor, like bus pullouts or things like that. And
Right.
and for especially our midtown projects, most
Right.
of ours are not simple lane expansions.
Right. And so with those, I didn't show all of the that was kind of the long form as it related to some capacity enhancements, expansion rather. There is a shorter form that just has kind of just 4 sets of project scoping and development right away and operations. So that it would be able to accommodate that those estimate cycles.
If I may just make one more quick comment,
Yes.
Madam Chair, and Josh, I just wanted to make sure you understand that from our point of view, that an expansion for bicycle paths is an expansion project also. Just because it doesn't
Right.
provide more car lanes does not mean it is not an expansion project.
Very good point. Catherine?
Thank you. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Not so much about the tool that you just went over, Josh, but kind of the process in general. I know the last RMAP that was just approved a couple years ago has been referred to as a mini update. So I'm wondering, how is this update really going to differ from that, besides adding 10 more years of funding to the end and obviously projects to go with it?
Yeah, based on the update cycle, we'd be looking at kind of preparing that, taking the effort to kind of clean up that list. There's going to be, I don't know if Paul wants to potentially step in here.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
So, one of the things we've already talked about is the update from 2020 really used a lot of the public outreach based assumptions that were established in the 2016 RMAP itself, the version that was done in 2016. We can't then just perpetuate that additionally. So we need to go back out and have those conversations and exchanges with the public to get a better sense of what their priorities are, as well as try to get some input on how to address some of the technological evolution that we're seeing happen within transportation network itself, as well as fuels and EVs and things of that nature. All of that content will build into the scenario development for us running for the first time formally the activity-based model, which is going to deal with person trips a little bit differently and has more capability to deal with EV fleet conversion and autonomous vehicles, the telework conditions that we're seeing now. There's going to be various scenarios that we're going to have to look at in order to figure out what the most reasonable assumption is for telework continuation. We went from something like 3% up to 20% worker telework within the region. Is that going to continue? So we have to go all the way back down to the base level in a lot of regards. And that includes all of the input from the public, what we're thinking about, and hearing from you all about the future of transportation, technology, the nature of projects, and then how we examine scenarios within the activity-based model. And particularly, let's not forget about land use and population distribution and employment distribution. Those are all things that we're going to need to step through. So it's, in a lot of senses, more of a wholesale restart of thinking about a long-range plan, and we're adding 10 years. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, and yeah, that's kind of the general overview, but that's the approach that we're anticipating.
So if I can ask a follow-up, there's obviously a lot of interplay between RTA Next and the RMAP. And as we go out and seek public input, how is that kind of relationship going to be explained? Is it going to be a singular effort trying to get public input that informs this plan, or these two separate paths that we're on?
We're still having those conversations internally, Catherine, and we're very cautious about not wanting to confuse the public on both of these efforts. So we're considering whether those need to be wholly separate or can be combined at parts. I think it might become a mixture of both. We do want to keep RTA Next distinctly different and separate and identifiable that way. However, there may be some RTA Next related questions that we embed into the RMAP outreach itself, so that we can understand from the public things like, all right, what are your transportation priorities? And beyond that, what might you be willing to pay out of your own pocket in terms of those priorities? So that might give us a better sense of what's more appealing from a sales tax perspective for RTA Next continuation. So separate for the most part, but there may be sprinkles of sales tax and RTA Next within the RMAP outreach as we're envisioning it. But stay tuned. We'll bring you more information on that. And hopefully we can chart a course that's clear to everyone and doesn't cause undue confusion.
Okay, last question, maybe.
Sure.
I know last update we had some like working groups, different subcommittees established that had a lot of conversations, not at a TPC or TIP level. Do we anticipate something similar, time frame for getting those people identified and dialed into this process?
At this point in time, TPC is really going to be our hub committee for this. We will need to bring in other experts, some of which we'll do through our PopTech technical committee, but there'll also have to be some ad hoc involvement that we initiate through you as the TPC reps and through our other committee channels. So at this point, we're not envisioning an RMAP specific task force. We're envisioning TPC to essentially serve that task force role with more extensive outreach to other experts and practitioners through our committee channels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Those were great questions. I have one. So you asked us to do the maintenance by August 1st of this year. So will you be sending out reminders to us all throughout between now and then?
Yes, and
Vice Chair. Yeah,
Go for
Josh
it.
and I have already had these conversations, and Josh is available to do one-on-one training. We can also get a smaller group together. This might be a lot to kind of wrap your head around initially, and sometimes it's helpful to walk through it, stop it. Can you explain that to me? I'm not quite clear on how that cost estimate piece is put together, et cetera. So we're available for all of that, and we'll touch base with you to kind of remind you where the website is and help you along if you have login issues or anything like that. And that will kind of jumpstart our request to you to get in there and start reviewing projects.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions from the committee on this topic? Well, thank you, Josh, and Paul, and David. We'll move on to the next item. The next item is a regional transportation revenue update. Mr. Jamie Brown.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee.
Good morning. Thank you.
The TPC meeting packet memo for this item includes an update to the table we shared at the February meeting with revenue information for HERF 12.626 and RTA, as well as the federal obligation authority amounts. The meeting packet also includes an updated HERF revenue report. Some key points to consider are that all revenue projections will be reviewed and updated during the next TIP development cycle this summer. As you can see, actual revenues are performing better than anticipated. Also, upcoming PAG Regional Council and RTA Board discussions, as well as anticipated policy decisions that will follow, will guide how and when regional funds can be programmed during the next TIP cycle. And finally, under the next agenda item, Rick Ellis will be sharing an update on the RTA Project Review Task Force activities. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions from the committee on this topic? Okay, thank you, Jamie. I'm seeing no questions at the moment.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to item number 7, RTA project scope change or review process. Mr. Rick Ellis.
Morning, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Let me see if I can get myself squared away, make sure this is working. Fantastic. Well, I wanted to come and talk to you and give you a brief kind of update presentation on how the TMC is handling the scope review change process on that and the activities where they're at, kind of a little bit of background to tie in information from what Jim DeGroot has shared before, and then also kind of a status update of where things are at currently. So to kind of frame the background of it, purpose, why we're doing this. So as you recall from last year, this is under the auspice of the TMC. So they had asked the member jurisdictions, and the RTA had issued then the request for consideration of projects that had wanted to consider open the door for discussion on scope changes. So that was sent out from the RTA. Since then, we've received 3 proposals that came in from the jurisdiction, and I'll talk more in detail about those. And additional projects have been identified for scope evaluation on that. So we know there's more out there. And this was really to get ourselves an approach and a methodology that would allow more consistency. Previous ones that had come in over the last 15 years have been very, very isolated in kind of a single point or single circumstance. But with a broader call for that, we recognized we wanted to have an approach that would then provide a uniform, consistent, and evaluative type of method, which would allow for better evaluation on those type of trade-offs. So overall summary, and it's key to note that Jim DeGroot has been working with the Project Review Task Force on this. This methodology, he's developed a much more detailed working document and paper with them that they've been kind of collaborating on, have adopted, and are using on the methodology going forward. But I wanted to take a little bit of time here with this group to just hear and share the key highlights on this. So first and foremost is any project that comes in or is identified between combination of staff and the jurisdiction, along with any supporting documentation, that in turn will then be forwarded to the project review task force for the analysis and recommendations. So that's the home where this resides. That's where the effort has been originated from, and we want to keep that concentrated in that specific committee's purview. Now, the task force has identified as they go through this that there are several factors they're going to be considering, and I'm just highlighting a few of the most common ones. Obviously, the traffic impacts, but also looking at the overall corridor functionality, taking into account the alternate modes of transit, bike, and pedestrian as well. They'll also be looking at any kind of safety issues that are either present out there or potential risk situations. Any impacts that may be associated with any anticipated land use or opportunistic land use possibilities out there, the funding components out there, and then any adherence and compliance with the necessary codes, policies associated with the RTA plan effort. So the overall process that'll happen on this is the committee will do its review, evaluation, and analysis, working collaboratively with the jurisdictions to make sure that that information is up to date, current, using the latest and greatest on that. A position paper will then be drafted by the task force, and it's going to be shared with the staff here at RTA, as well as the requesting jurisdiction for any comments, feedback, corrections, or revisions as necessary. Once finalized by the task force and once they've completed their analysis and their paper and their efforts on that, that position paper will then be shared with the TMC for their review. And upon review by that, now the TMC reserves the right to decide what action they may or may not take. So then following that review, evaluation, and discussion, the RTA will present that scope change request to the board, and then we can include any recommendations or positions that have been taken by either the jurisdiction, the staff, and or the TMC. It's important to note that the RTA has the statutory and fiduciary responsibility complying with our voter approved plan. That's a reminder that we've always made sure is prevalent in any of these process activities, and that the RTA board, they're the ones that retain the sole authority, as you've seen on the other position projects that have been taken and the changes that have been made, that to either approve, deny, or modify the scope change request on that. So it still lies purely with the board as the managers of the current plan. So where we stand now is the task force is currently reviewing 3 projects. Project 13, which is First Avenue South, First Avenue North from Orange Grove to Ina. Project 14, which is First Avenue South from Grant to River. And then they've also heard an initial presentation on Silverbell from Pima County, from Ina to Grant, specifically looking at the section right now from Camino del Cerro to Ina. So the first section's been built from the south from Grant to Goree. Second is coming up, and the completion of the design utility with an anticipated construction for later this fall. But the remaining piece from Del Cerro up to the north end has been presented and shared and given an initial overview to the task force. Some future possibilities that have initially been identified that are still very early. Nothing's been formally submitted on it, but these are out there swirling with discussions and conversations. Is the Houghton Road project, which is number 32, specifically the segment is Irvington to 22nd, and then also the very northern end piece from Broadway to Tanque Verde. RTA 31, the Harrison Road from Golf Links to Irvington. The scope called for a new bridge over the Pantano, but there's been discussion about adding a reconstruction out there and improving to a 4-lane section. So that's going to be further evaluation. And then lastly, 22nd Street, the overall project goes from I-10 to Tucson, but specifically the piece from I-10 to Keno is one that has been identified as a potential candidate for further review, discussion, and evaluation. And with that, Madam Vice Chair, I can answer any questions from you or the committee.
Thank you, Rick. Are there any questions from the committee? Catherine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick question. I think it's great. The county, of course, has been involved in a lot of these task force meetings. It's good conversation. Things are moving forward. I'm curious with the TIP development coming up this summer, and I know that the new timeline that was distributed earlier this week showed that September, October, we'll have the RTA project list, which I'm assuming we'll have to have these recommendations and all of the remaining RTA projects at that time. Will the RTA board have had an opportunity to review and approve the recommendations of the task force by that time?
Catherine, right now the task force is continuing to bang along full speed on the efforts they've got. They have not given a detailed time frame of when they expect to have these efforts completed. We know they are working on it actively. We've been providing information with them back and forth, both in the committee forum as well as anything supplemental. So I don't, at this point in time, have a good time frame for how it'll line up with that tip development activity.
Okay, well, that would be a question for our next meeting. It'd be great to start to see those being layered into our schedule of all the activities we have ahead of us this summer with the RMAP now as well. So thank you.
I will make sure I share that with Jim as well, and that we make sure that that's known, that that overlap will be coming up this fall.
Thank you. Robin?
Yes, this is sort of a piggyback, Madam Chair, to Catherine's comments, and understanding that the TMC is responsible for the project scope changes, but we've also got issues with project overages, even though the scopes haven't changed. And I wonder both how that rolls into the tip and whether or not we'll continue to go through a NOFA process for all of these. I suspect that the more comprehensive way to do it would be as part of the tip so that we understand the compilation of all of the various projects and which ones we expect to go over and maybe sometimes under, and especially thinking about how much these construction costs are increasing and how we're going to account for that when we look at the tip creation. So I want that sort of to be considered, and maybe it's more the next item where it's for the next agenda, but it does go into this process, which is change versus not changing, but having cost increases.
Thank you, Robin. Those are all good points made as we move forward on the tip development. And I know that we've mentioned this before our last meetings, as we work on the next tip development, having all this information and decisions made is going to be the most helpful way to get us a true and accurate fiscally constrained program. So, Jamie, did you want to add anything? Or?
No, I was just in agreement with what you just said. So that's perfect. As I had mentioned too in my remarks, that we have anticipated regional council and RTA board discussions and decisions that will guide how some of the programming will be conducted for the tip development process. So we're following that closely and understand that it will impact the tip process. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on item number 7? Okay, I don't see any. So thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, which is future agenda items. Does anybody want to mention any future agenda items now? Robin?
Just the one, I think I jumped the gun earlier, Madam Chair. I would like to talk about how, in this committee, how exactly we go about accounting for increases in costs for various projects that are either in design or in construction and have not had scope changes.
Okay, thank you. Catherine?
I would just add, I know they distributed via email that tentative tip development process schedule, but that would be great to discuss as a group.
Thank you. Okay. Any others anybody would like to add to the next agenda? Okay, seeing none. Our next agenda item is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you. I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed and wants to stay on? I hear nothing. So we're in adjournment. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.